Hi, this is Pastor Joel with Right Response Ministries. This is another episode of our podcast/show called Questions. Today's question is as follows. Why does crisis almost always serve the political left? Why does crisis almost always serve the political left? In order to answer this question, I've written the following. It is of the utmost importance that we remind ourselves that although we should resist the temptation of politicizing everything, everything is still being politicized by someone else. Suppose we believe that policies, including what kind of bans should be enforced during a pandemic, flow downstream from morality, and that morality flows downstream from theology. If this is the case, Christians must exercise careful discernment as we swim through the sea of information provided by secular sources. Do Christians hold to the doctrine of common grace? Yes. By borrowing from the Christian worldview, can an atheist make certain discoveries that are undeniably true and helpful? Yes. However, as Christians, we must also recognize that every man has an allegiance. Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. Matthew chapter 12, verse 30. In other words, Christians must better familiarize themselves with the myth of neutrality. A few years ago, I remember being profoundly challenged by a small book that presented a concise rebuttal to the two-kingdom theology espoused by many theologians today. And in this book, the author pushed back on one individual two-kingdom theologian's assertion, if that makes sense. So one guy who holds the two-kingdom theology, the author pushed back on his assertion that there is nothing moral about making stir-fry. Now, the author did this by providing examples of certain cannibalistic tribes that would fry their victims' flesh with vegetables in a pan. So apparently, even stir-fry cooks have a morality. They are influenced by a certain allegiance. Apparently, there is something moral about stir-fry. This concept of the myth of neutrality encompasses everything, even the collection and presentation of data. When we read studies which promote themselves as politically neutral and strictly following the science, we should do so with a certain degree of holy suspicion. This is because we are reading nothing less than the findings of an individual who is radically influenced by his or her worldview, even if only subconsciously. Everyone holds to certain presuppositions. As Hillary Clinton infamously said, never let a good crisis go to waste. Crisis is key for the political left in our nation because liberty, that is individual, personal liberty, always seems to get in the way of progressive political agendas. So how does the political left find its way around those pesky provisions outlined in our nation's Constitution? Well, they incessantly search for ways to convince the masses to trade their liberty in for something else. It's a classic bait and switch maneuver. And almost nothing historically has served as a more enticing bait than public safety. Personal liberty for public safety. A terrible trade, to be sure, but a decision that the general public has been willing to make in our nation time and time again. In the 70s, it was global cooling. You probably forgot about that one. In the 80s, it was global warming. Later, this evolved into climate change. And then, as if right on schedule, our politicians have recently informed us that we're now entering into a climate crisis. Now, due to this claim, the Democrats sought to slip elements of the Green New Deal into their relief package for COVID-19. Again, crisis is key for any political leader that yearns for more power. However, for this crisis strategy to actually work, the ruling elites must somehow convince the general public that the crisis actually exists. This task requires at least two primary institutions, academia and the media. If any two spheres have been completely monopolized by the political left in our nation, they are undoubtedly the spheres of academia and media. The left owns our nation's universities, Harvard, Yale, Oxford, etc., and rules them with an iron fist. Therefore, if we genuinely believe that neutrality is a myth and that our theology and morality influence every area of our lives, we must commit to exercising careful discernment as we read any academic report. Again, the political left dominates not only universities, but also the media. Universities do the research, and the media presents their findings. Godless Yale and godless New York Times working in perfect concert. Once more, can unbelievers contribute in helpful ways due to God's common grace? Yes. Therefore, as Christians, there are times that we should be willing to read these reports. I am merely advocating that we read them as Christians. There appear to be at least two common pitfalls for Christians during times of crisis. First, Christians can ignore the worst possible outcomes without any credible reasoning for doing so, simply because they cannot stomach the results. This is denial. While possessing the veneer of courage, denial is a little more than a subtle form of fear. Second, Christians can believe everything we hear without 1 ounce of holy suspicion. Our secular universities and left political media have overplayed virtually every virus there has ever been, often pulling crises out of thin air. It behooves us, therefore, to remember that these are the same people who assured us that everyone would be dead by now if we did not begin using solar panels and driving electric cars. And presently, the political party of science in our nation can't even recognize the difference between a boy and a girl. Therefore, Christians need courage so that we do not give in to the temptation of baseless denial, and yet, perhaps even more so, Christians need courage so that we stop immediately forfeiting all of our God-given rights every time we hear a negative report, simply because it flies under the banner, the science. Thanks for tuning in, and God bless. Thanks for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, we hope that you'll take a moment and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can watch more content like this. Also, take a moment and give this video a like so that it can reach more people, and take a moment and click on the bell so that you'll be notified whenever we come out with new content. Thanks so much. God bless.